Hi, Sam, and welcome to Life After Graduation. Good to have you on the show. Unfortunately, Claire can't make it today, but it'll just be only me. So just about the intro, this is our third episode, and yeah, you're our third speaker. So welcome aboard, Sam.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me. Life after graduation, I sound very old, but it was only 4 years ago since I graduated. So yeah, good to be with you.
Thank you. So yeah, could you give us a small introduction about yourself, what you do, and yeah.
Yeah, so I'm currently working in Canberra for the ACT government as in the Department of Transport. I work as a human resources advisor. So in my role, I assist with a lot of the onboarding and recruitment of people into our organisation. So assist them with any training requirements they need in their role. Obviously, our department has a very diverse workforce. We employ a lot of bus drivers, for example, and we've recently installed a light rail in Canberra, which is an expanding project. So we now have light rail running. So, and we also, as part of our department's portfolio, we look after a lot of the main, services to the city, like your libraries, your parks,
Okay.
a lot of those common, you publicly used areas. We maintain and employ people working to look after, look after Canberra. So,
that's really interesting because as you said that you mentioned that you graduated 4 years ago, and then of course coming into a role that is quite, of course, unique in human resources when you're hiring and
yeah,
onboarding a lot of people, including graduates, of course.
yeah,
One of the
yeah.
questions that I wanted to ask you was, what was that transition from university student into a graduate position and at a government entity like?
Yeah, so as I said, I graduated in 2016 with a double degree in business administration and public policy. I then had probably, I would say, a second gap year in 2017 where I didn't have a full-time job. I worked part-time and I travelled as well. And saved up a bit of money and looked and basically job hunted. So I applied for a lot of the graduate programs in Canberra exclusively for a lot of the Commonwealth departments, which are very competitive. Unfortunately, I didn't make it to the later stages of any of those processes, but I applied for a graduate role with the ACT government and was lucky enough to secure it. So the transition from university to full-time work, it was different. I would say the first 6 months working full-time in the program was quite an adjustment. But now, after being in the workforce for nearly 2.5 years, I love my job. I think it has grown me professionally and personally. And it also complements the work I do in table tennis. It's improved my interpersonal skills, my people management skills. So I'm glad I'm in a job, everyday job that suits me personally, which I think is such a luxury to have.
I think I can get where you're coming from, because I'm kind of in that same position where I've just graduated, for example, 6 months ago, and then transitioning to that work environment, being into a graduate role, and then it's quite a big adjustment. I do agree, and then I think for a lot of future graduates coming out of uni, I think it's kind of daunting. It's that daunting part.
It is.
Yeah, like having that hat on, and then the next day is, what do I do? So I think we'll touch on to your role as in HR, for example, in the ACT government. What is the fine mistakes or top 5 mistakes that you see graduates make, or fresh graduates, sorry, that make on their resume?
Um, I think I'll start. I'll probably touch on a few points, not just in their CV, but just in the way. Um, Also, because I've conducted a lot of panels for interviewing potential candidates, so I'll touch on some of the mistakes I've picked up in interviewing as well as CVs. I think with CVs, one of the major um, issues I've seen with CVs that I've looked at is people are not including enough of what they've recently done. I'm talking within the last 3 years, 3 to 5 years. A lot of people put in things in their CV which are back from 10, 15 years ago, which for graduates is not quite as applicable. But they're referencing things that they did in primary school, for example, which are not of great interest um, to me as an employer. It's more what they've achieved in their university life. Obviously, with the graduate program, it is a program aimed at university students or people who have achieved a degree in the last 5 years. So making sure that you include what you've done at university, not just your academic performance, but what you've achieved in your extracurricular activities. So I think getting involved with as many societies as possible in university. So I think that's one thing with CVs is including as much extracurricular activity and what are the skills that you got out of being involved in, for example, it might be a sporting club or it might be a cultural association. We obviously employ a lot of international people who were international students, and they may have achieved their permanent residency, which allows them to work in ACT government. So just the main thing is the selling of yourself, selling yourself through your CV, and then in the interview stage, making sure that you are confident and you come across very naturally. Don't over communicate or oversell yourself. You will then come across as disgenuine. So it's about, I guess, getting that confidence from within and then kind of projecting it outwards in an interview and in the CV. It's all linked together. The CV, the interview, it's kind of a packaged performance in my view.
That's great advice. I think coming from a point of view when you're at university, it's that great time of that time period, or that bubble I call it, where you can actually get involved and then building on your soft skills. What's some advice on building soft skills? What type of soft skills do you actually look into in graduates? Give an example. Communication skills, of course, is quite sought for.
Yeah, so interpersonal skills, particularly in some areas that require a lot of client, I guess, interaction. So, for example, in HR, in the marketing communication space, in your policy making space, you need to have those skills to be able to confidently engage stakeholders or people from outside of your organisation. In the more technical roles, such as your finance, accounting, engineering, the focus is probably less on your soft skills, but I still think there needs to be a balance between the soft and the technical, or the soft and the hard skills. For me, I didn't really want to go into HR. As I said, I did a double degree, but my main interest was in policy. So when I was at university, I did a public policy degree, and I also did a 2-month cadetship at the Commonwealth Department of Education, working in their policy area. So that was my real interest. And when I applied for the graduate program, we had to pick 2 preferences of the streams that we wanted to apply for roles in. And my first preference was policy, and my second one was business under the management, HR, marketing side of things. So I didn't really want to get into HR. I just sort of fell into the role. But I think I adapted, I embraced the challenge, and I've I've found my I guess my calling currently in working in HR. But I think HR is one of those very transferable skills, because every organisation needs HR, because
Yeah.
people are ultimately an organisation's most valuable resource. Um, so yeah, don't neglect the soft skills in any role, because we're increasingly in a world where we're having to, we communicate frequently, whether it's through virtual avenues, or later down the track, face to face. So
That's great advice, Sam. But yeah, that's really great advice for uh, alumni and graduates coming out of university. Of course, I think it's really important that we can build those soft skills. It's not just about doing academically well in a classroom environment, but it's actually excelling in your other skills that are very important in the industry. Now, I really wanted to touch on a few things, other things about your table tennis, which is a big part of your of course, not only your CV, but your whole social sphere, I would say. Knowing you from the table tennis community, and you're from the New South Wales ACT area, and I'm from Victoria. I think we've got those distances, but we've got the same that same mindset of developing the sport. And then, of course, I think the one thing that I've noticed from a lot of people in the table tennis sphere, no bias towards other sports, but you've developed a lot of skills from working in community building, working in international student groups in general. What sort of impact has helped you, and then impact international students, and then what's that reward? So what's that combination?
Yeah, so when I guess my first interaction with international students through table tennis was when I started my degree at the ANU, the Australian National University. The first, even before I started there, I think late 2012, when I was applying for different universities, I immediately looked at was there table tennis at the university? And ANU had a recently, at that time they were not a very well established club. I guess they were still in their development stages. So when I started at the ANU in 2013, I then became actively involved in the ANU table tennis club, first taking on role as a secretary for the first year, and then vice president in my second year, and then for the last 2 years of my degree, I led the club as the president. But the first interactions I had with international students were through the club, and I guess using the medium of table tennis as a way of connecting students from many different countries. We had obviously a lot of Asian students, so Chinese, Japanese. We had some from Vietnam. We had some from Malaysia and Singapore. So they were predominantly the club was built up of those students from those backgrounds, but it was a great melting pot of people, because we all had a common interest, and it didn't matter what for me, growing up in Albury, not a very multicultural place at the time when I was growing up. It has changed now, but for me, coming to Canberra, and then the first people that I met at the university were people that I'd, from countries that I'd never met before. So I'm thankful for table tennis for allowing me to engage with people from all over the world. And then since then, obviously, through my, traveling, in Australia, I've been able to connect with people from all, from mostly all over the country. So it's been very, very rewarding from that aspect.
I think I've got a bit of bias there, because I do come from that that community of table tennis. Like I had a very similar story of joining the table tennis club at Swinburne University, where I studied, and then of course built that that multicultural environment where you have different diverse backgrounds of people that can come together and, of course, play table tennis, train and compete together. It's a great thing that sport can do, bring people together, and then, of course, your opportunities grow with the more and more people that you meet through the networking opportunities. And I can see that you've developed that through ITTA, which is something that I'm very, I can see that you're very passionate about. And of course, in Victoria, we've got our own Victorian InterVarsity Games, which has a very similar theme. Now, I've got a question for you about that. With the ITTA, what are some of the things that you guys have done with the student engagement? I know that you guys work with 4 major New South Wales and ACT universities. Can you tell me a bit about that and your involvement?
Yeah, so my first involvement with ITTA was in about 2015. They established themselves in 2014, and I sort of noticed them a little bit on social media. They were doing some small tournaments between the 4 major universities in Sydney, so UNSW, UTS, University of Sydney, and Macquarie. And I just flicked a message to their president, Robert Lee, at the time, and I said, hey Rob, my name's Sam. I'm from the ANU. I'm very interested in what you guys are doing. Could I perhaps learn a little bit more or come along to one of your meetings? And he was great. He basically got me involved straight away. And I was frequently traveling up to Sydney for their meetings. We used to meet about once a month. So I was probably getting a lot of frequent flyer points on the Murray's bus up to Sydney at that time. And then obviously the tournament started to evolve into bigger events. So I was involved with ITTA sort of in 2 stages, initially from 2015 to about early 2017. And then my university degree was getting a little bit more involved at that stage. I was coming towards sort of the latter part of my degree. So I decided to step away from ITTA for about 2 years. I then came back. In fact, at that stage, I'd graduated, but I was in the stage where I was transitioning from graduating to finding a full-time job. So I needed to focus on that at that time in early 2017. I then came back to ITTA in late 2018. I noticed that they were still running really, highly engaged events, and a lot of new faces had come into the organisation. So it was a constantly evolving organisation. So I came back in late 2018. And by then I was a little bit more experienced with, event management and running tournaments, as I'd been doing that in Canberra for table tennis ACT. So I came back and I was really rejuvenated, and I wanted to bring, what I could. And I originally sort of just came back. It wasn't meant to be a sort of a long-term engagement, but now I'm still with them here in mid-2020. So what the ITTA I think is unique is that they've been able to really uphold what the spirit I think of table tennis is, which is friendship, community, bringing so many large different groups together for a common cause. And to me, that's really what the game is all about. Although we compete to do well and win, I think you can't lose. The game can't lose, and you can't lose individually when you get something like that out of what these type of organisations bring. It's been a highlight of my involvement in table tennis, being involved in ITTA. So my current role is obviously tournament director. Last year was a huge year for ITTA. We ran many, I would say, big showcase events. One of them was at the Sydney Olympic Park. It was run on 24 tables, nearly 150 players. One of the biggest tournaments, local tournaments in Australia for that year. And it was just a huge culmination of of all of our energy, and it was just a fantastic team effort. So at the moment, we're in a stage of, I guess we've had to pause what we're doing, but we're trying to do a lot of things in the background to keep ourselves engaged with the sport, keep the community, the university community engaged, and think about other ways in which we can bounce back at the sort of on the other end of this pandemic.
I think it's really great that what you're doing within the community. I think I personally think it helps a lot of students build their own interpersonal skills and their own soft skills for the future, especially getting involved with, I think the one thing that I've always, and probably from my own perspective and then bringing it from your perspective, is that passion and that drive to actually helping students, and then not only helping students, but actually helping yourself in terms of your personal development, in terms of your social and both your professional, which is very important when you put them together as a combination, because what I can tell from my point of view is when you go to work, it's that environment where you're working with cross functional teams, you're working with people from different backgrounds, and then of course you're embracing this whole community. And I think it's great to see what ITTA is doing in the New South Wales region, and of course in inspiring other states, university bodies to doing exactly the same thing. From coming from myself, who's been involved in the table tennis community since I started at university, I can 100% relate to what you've given, and hopefully you can inspire a few students, because I think the future it's bright for the sport, and then of course it's not only bright for the sport, it's bright for the Australian graduate community, I think, and the student community, of course. But my last question relates back to time management. This is something I wanted to touch on from the start. I can see that you've done a lot of extracurricular activities within your university days, and of course continuing that continuous involvement after graduation. As you can see, the name of the show, Life After Graduation. And it's something that I really admire, and I'm very inspired by the way that you've done things. For example, you've graduated over 4 years ago, and to be still involved in the community, it's something very inspiring. Now, as we all know, working can be what we call the working grind, 9 to 5. How do you time manage and put everything in place? And what type of advice would you give to students trying to learn and build their communication and time management skills?
I think at the beginning, it's important to develop good routines and good habits. So setting an everyday routine for yourself, at least that works for me. Like knowing, okay, I'm going to start at 8:30 in the morning. And I'm going to aim to finish by 4:30 every day. And then maybe, if I need to work extra hours because I've got extra tasks to do, yes, do that. Accumulate a little bit of time, and then on a Friday I can finish a little bit early and then go do something else on a Friday afternoon, or so I guess managing your week, knowing what's ahead in your week, and knowing where to split your time and effort. I guess it's different in university, because university is very loosely structured, I would say. You obviously have your timetable that you attend your lectures and tutorials, but I would say when you get into a 9 to 5 working career life, that's a very set, you sort of know, okay, I'm going to be working between these hours. How can I then best maximize those other hours outside of my working life to get to achieve as good a balance as possible? Setting short-term goals for yourself. So, really put in, extra hard yards. So at the end of the week, you can, afford that trip, where you want to go on the weekend, or you can, go and do something outside of work that keeps your mind and body, I guess, in a good place. at the moment, with the current situation, it is becoming more important to have that balance. And with most of the workforce transitioning to working from home, it is easier, I think, to have that balance, because you can have more flexible hours. You don't, you're not commuting to work. You're in your own space, and I think that hopefully has led to people being more productive and more and happier as a result. I know it's not ideal to work from home, and we'd rather be in an office environment, but I think setting good habits. What they say, it takes 30 days to form a habit. So give yourself time to form, okay, I'm going to have set hours. If I want to take a longer lunch break, okay, I start a little bit earlier and I finish a little bit later. It's really, there's no right or wrong way to it. It's really an individual approach, but it does take some time to get used to, because, as I said, you're going from university, which is very loosely structured, and to working where it's more structured.
That's really good advice, Sam. I think I can agree on that. It's all about individual. I think it's also to do with like the individual drive, just to add, of how you work, and then having those individual small things, I would say, that help you with your time management. And yeah, that's great advice, Sam. But we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for coming on Life After Graduation, presented by Alex and Claire. Thank you very much, Sam. And to the listeners, I hope you can take a few things out of this, because I think Sam he's done a lot of good things in the table tennis community, and of course in the student university sphere. So thanks for coming on and giving some greatly timely advice. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for having me, Alex, and stay safe and well during the pandemic.
Same to you.
Thank you.